Mrs. Clinton stumbling in what, as you saw in that video, some say appears to be almost a partial collapse, will put a new focus on the issue of her health and calls for her and Donald Trump to both release their medical records. Joining us now is Brian Robinson, president of Robinson Republic, former communications director for Georgia Republican Governor Nathan Deal, and Jehmu Greene, 2008 Clinton campaign advisor and a Fox News political analyst. Jehmu, let me start with you. It was in the low 80s this morning. Coming to work, it was humid, not as bad as yesterday when it was in the middle 90s. And she's standing there in dark clothes for like 90 minutes during the ceremony. But this does raise new questions and concerns about her health.
Certainly. I mean, the first concern is that we want to make sure that she's okay, and good to hear from the campaign that she is. I think that this will certainly shine a new light on both candidates, providing credible information about their health. We've seen that Secretary Clinton has provided much more serious information about her health concerns than Donald Trump has, but after this situation, of course, they're going to have to give us more details. And I would hope that Donald Trump does it and doesn't just do it on Dr. Oz.
Well, do you think Mrs. Clinton will do that? There have been calls to release the medical records fully.
Well, it's something we've seen previous presidential candidates release. I think, I personally think, just like tax returns, we should stay in what has become just the norm and to get all of this information from both of our candidates. But we have to look at this, I think, on an equal playing field, because we can't continue the situation like we have with the tax returns, where she provides detailed information, takes this race very seriously, and her opponent, Donald Trump, does not.
Well, Brian, Jehmu just said Donald Trump doesn't take this very seriously. So let me start with, though, the health of Mrs. Clinton and what this video shows you.
Well, it looked to me the way she stumbled and tumbled over getting into that van. So I think we need to remember that we now have candidates that are much older, that are Social Security recipients than we've had in the past. I mean, 68 years old and 70 years old. It's more important than ever that we know the full health histories of someone that we're going to hire for the most important job in the country for 4 years. Making sure they're in tip-top health is of great importance.
And doesn't that include Donald Trump also?
Transparency.
Doesn't that include your candidate too? I mean, he's going to go on Dr. Oz and talk about his doctor had that 5-minute note. He said he sketched out in a limo saying he's the healthiest person ever in the history of the world to run for a political office. You know, Brian, how about Mr. Trump's medical records?
I think transparency is going to be important on both sides of the issue. I don't think it's partisan. I think we've got two people who are at an age where their health could be questioned. And when you have video backed up, like what we saw today, that makes it that much more interesting to the public. You know, in the early 2000s, when George W. Bush choked on a pretzel and fainted, there was no video of that. It was never a part of the visual of what you thought of him. There's video of this, and that really changes things and makes people remember it a little more, and it also backs up what people already think about Hillary Clinton. There have been questions raised about her health in the past, particularly after her concussion in 2012. Now, there's something to back it up. There's something that we have on video as evidence that something may not be quite like they tell us it is.
Well, you know, here's the Jehmu, just a second, because this is the letter from her doctor, who says she's in excellent health. She's on blood thinners. But guess what? She's got better blood pressure than Donald Trump. She's 100 over 65. Trump's doctor says that he's 110 over 65. But you know, Brian has a good point, Jehmu. That video is going to be seen over and over again. Remember when George H.W. Bush, President Bush, threw up on the Japanese prime minister? And then apparently fainted, and he's skydiving out of airplanes a few years ago. I mean, this video is going to be on thousands of times over the next week.
Look, Eric, when I saw the video, I will admit it, my heart almost stopped for a second. But the reality is, Hillary Clinton is human. I believe that was the response that we heard from the Bush White House at the time when he fainted. People get overheated. People faint. If we were operating under normal circumstances, and I think the common decency that presidential campaigns have had, even though they've been very closely contested, if we were operating under normal circumstances and not this reality show that we have been, it would be a different conversation.
Do you think she will release her records finally and
I
do you
think they
she's
will
gonna
be
say?
responsible as they have been from the beginning. And to Brian's point about the first response from when she fell and had the concussion, the response was that she was faking the concussion. So they've gone through, she was faking it, then she had seizures, then, I mean, all of these conspiracy
she did have
theories.
a concussion, you know, I mean, we know that she did. So, Brian, a final word.
Yeah, we know she had a concussion.
Will Donald Trump be held to the same standard? Do you think he will release his medical records? Hasn't done his tax records yet. And are we going to learn more about his health?
Well, he's already said that he's going to go on this show and talk about it. I highly encourage him to be able to push this issue with Clinton if he wants to, but to do it, he's going to have to hold up his side of the bargain and release his records.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
All right. So we've got maybe one yes and one maybe. We'll address it and we'll see what happens. Of course, we do hope that Mrs. Clinton is fine and rested up and that maybe she just was overheated and it's not something that's far more serious. Ryan and Jimmu, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Eric.
Of course.
Thank you.